Call the meeting of the Board of Zoning, Planning, and Appeals to order. I guess Mr. Bryan going to take roll call? Or?
Yeah, I will do that. Commissioner Jasper?
Here.
Kretschmer?
Here.
Commissioner Laughlin?
Here.
Commissioner Williams? Commissioner Pippin?
Here.
Commissioner Graziano?
I am present.
And Chairman Corey is not.
Ask you all to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I'd ask anybody with a electronic device to please put it on vibrate, just so I don't get distracted. Okay, first item, which we kind of discussed informally here, but would be the approval of the minutes of the July 13th, 2017 ZPA meeting. Any comments, corrections, questions?
I have none.
Hearing none, I will.
How do we word that now?
Pat did this differently the last time. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
First case.
Okay, we'll call village case number, or ZPA file number 17, ZPA 07001. The petitioner is the Cary Park District, looking for a map amendment rezoning of the property known as Lions Park. I'm assuming all the exhibits and that are in order, Mr. Simmons?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So would you like to give us a brief synopsis of what we're discussing here?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The request this evening is from the Cary Park District. They're seeking a map amendment to rezone the Lions Park property from the R1 single-family residential district to the Park and Open Space 4 district. As part of that rezoning, they're seeking conditional use approval for 3 existing uses which are on that property, which include a preschool, band shell, and lighted athletic fields. Just a summary, again, they're seeking the rezoning with the 3 conditional uses. A little history for the property. The park was originally created in 1972 for the southern portion of their subject property and was expanded in 1981 with an additional 60 plus acres. The property has been zoned R1 since its creation and has not been in another zoning districts throughout its lifetime. In 2011, as much of this board will know, the village adopted new zoning regulations for park and open space districts. Those 4 districts that were created were intended to provide zoning regulations for parks and open space areas that are within the village and the types of uses that would be appropriate within those zones. At that time period, Hoffman Park, which is just off of Cary-Algonquin Road in the southern half of the village, was the only property that was rezoned to one of those districts, which therefore made the existing Lions Park and the uses that are on the park that were at the creation of those zoning districts to be considered non-conforming, so that the existing facilities were all in existence at the time that those regulations were created. They were allowed uses within the residential district, but by creating the park and open space districts, those uses were only permitted within the park, the new zoning classifications. Little summary on the Park and Open Space District 4, which the petitioner is seeking to rezone the subject property to, is established for parks of over 50 acres in size that serve both community and regional-based recreational needs. The district is intended to preserve unique landscapes and natural areas and provide for active and passive, both outdoor and indoor recreational uses. The slide or the image that's on the right shows the Lions Park property in general and a number of environmental features which exist in the park in the western and southern half of the property And then also the north half of the property is where a lot of the recreational facilities are housed with the ball fields, skate park, and other sort of improvements. The table that was on the lower left-hand side of the screen shows uses that are permitted within the Park and Open Space District. The uses that are generally highlighted here are existing uses that are on the property. Existing permitted uses that are on the site include athletic field and courts, the skate park, play structures, the maintenance facility, parking lot, and concession stands. The three uses which also exist on the property which require conditional use approval in the new zoning district include the preschool, the lighted athletic fields, and the band shell. With the rezoning, they're seeking the conditional uses so that those existing uses would be, if rezoning is approved, would be conforming with the regulations for this property. Again, just summarizing the three conditional uses, the band shell is, this slide indicates where the uses are located at. The band shell is existing on the northern half of the property. There are three lighted athletic fields with approximately 16 light poles that light those fields, each in about 65 feet in height. Per code, the maximum height for a light standard is 75 feet, with the setback being required for those light standards equal to their height. There are two existing poles which are along the Cary Algonquin frontage, which are indicated in the slide that do not comply with that required setback. They're 25 feet at the nearest point to the Cary Algonquin property line and 53 feet for the second light pole. Those poles, although they're close to the property line, are additional 75-foot right-of-way and an additional setback for the residential area across the street on Cary Algonquin Road. So there's over 100 feet separation to neighboring residential properties.
So we don't need to conditional use those two on top of, or a variance on those two?
Correct. They're called out in the conditional use. They
are called out in the conditional use.
One of the conditions recommended is to identify those two at existing setback points.
And to allow them. Okay,
Correct,
but we
yes.
don't need to do a separate variance for
No.
those two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
That was my question.
And then third and finally, the preschool use was existing on the property, was also requesting conditional use approval for that use. Referring to the village's comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 2015, there's various directives towards the subject property and its long-term land use. Specifically, the land use plan identifies the park for parks and open space, which is appropriate for the existing use of a park. There's further dialogue within the plan speaking towards park improvements, that the village should promote enhancement and reinvestment in the existing park system with the Cary Park District and other potential partners. And then also with the park zoning, Park District would prefer to its remaining parks to be rezoned to the park and open space districts to be more effectively preserve existing parks and open space. As part of the village's ongoing zoning ordinance update, there may be modifications to the park and open space districts to consolidate them down to less districts, but presently the recommendation would be to comply or rezone the property to comply with the land use designation for parks and open space to the proposed zoning district. The zoning ordinance provides various standards that need to be met or satisfied in order for the consideration of the map amendment, which is summarized on the slide. In summary, the amendment promotes the public interest and not solely the interest of the applicant. It's consistent with existing uses of the property within general area of the property in question. Property is not generally not suitable for the uses permitted under the existing zoning classification, and the request is in harmony with the objectives of the comprehensive plan. Staff has mentioned the proposed use or the existing use of the park will remain. The reclassification will put the park, Lions Park, within a zoning classification that is more appropriate for the proposed and future uses of the site, and then also complies with the directives of the comprehensive plan. Similarly, the zoning ordinance provides various standards that comply for conditional uses, as summarized in the slide. The use should not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare, will not impede the normally orderly development of surrounding property, and will use will be consistent with the policies and future land use maps in the village's comprehensive plan. As mentioned, the 3 uses that are conditional uses being requested are existing on the property and have been for some time, so they will not significantly impact neighboring property values. With the granting of conditional use, they will allow the uses to remain in their present state, and the property owner would have zoning compliance should the uses be approved. Therefore, based off the information presented, petitioner will provide additional information in their information or presentation as well. But staff is recommending that the ZPA recommend approval of the following motion. 1, approval of a map amendment to rezone the Lions Park property located at 1200 Silver Lake Road from R1 single family residential to the PO4 Park and Open Space District. And second, approval of 3 conditional uses for lighted athletic fields, preschool, and a band shell, subject to the 2 conditions listed. 1 being that the conditional uses be approved for the subject property, and second, that the athletic fields light poles do not exceed a height of 75 feet, and that the 2 existing light poles be exempt from the setback requirement at their existing 25 and 53-foot setbacks. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have regarding this petition.
Apparently not at this time. Do we have a representative of the Park District that'd like to enhance on our information a little bit?
I'll try, but Brian did a very good job. My name is Dan Jones. I'm the director of the Cary Park District, and was even back working for the Park District when we wrote the zoning code to add the parks and open space. That I recognize several faces from my last appearance here. I think that was it. As I said, Brian did an excellent job of providing an overview as to, with regard to Lions Park. It'll be similar when he talks about the next application as well for Caper Park. I would just maybe recap a few things. Back in 2010, middle of 2010, the village and the Park District got together with the idea to draw up some zoning classes so that parks and open space in town, particular to the village and the Park District, could have its own zoning class. It was a mixed bag. It still is a mixed bag before, at that time as to the different classes. And we wanted to put together a zoning class that would work better for both parties when there was development or when there were changes or things that needed to be done on the sites. In 2011, as Mr. Simmons said, the Village of Cary and this board provided a recommendation to add those 4 zoning classes to it. And then shortly thereafter, Hoffman Park, which had been recently annexed into the village as well, was brought up to proper and put in a proper zoning class to a process similar to what we're going through now. The Park District, in going through that process, always has had the desire to get all of its properties into the most proper and appropriate zoning class. We did discuss that with just really at the village staff level, and it proved really to be just an arduous and complicated process. You can see just with doing one property here, the number of conditional uses and the number of things that have to be looked at. We talked about, is there some way we could do a blanket rezoning? The Park District has over 45 properties that we have, and they all have different conditions and things that are on them. And plus, there's a cost associated with it. As you know, there's a fee that has to be paid in order to undergo these processes. So the Park Board desired to rezone everything into the most, the proper and appropriate class, but it just proved to be too challenging. So moving forward, the decision was made is that as opportunities arose or as things were going to happen, that we would move at that time to get the properties properly zoned. And so really that's what we're doing today. In 2016, the Park District, after a year-long experience of its own, passed a comprehensive plan. Within that plan was a 5-year action plan that had it within a 10-year vision. The action plan contains many items to be completed. 2 of the first items that are going to be completed on that action plan have to do with Lions Park and Caper Park. And the types of activities looking to be done at those sites deal with what I'll call a rebirth of those sites. Not necessarily adding significant new features to the site, but addressing things that have been there a long time and have seen better days. with regard to how they've been used. And so that's what the board's exploring at this time. So the reason that we are here with regard to Lions Park is that we want to get the park into its proper zoning class so that as the board moves forward with this rebirth of this park site, that we're not fighting against variances or things like that we would encounter in a residential zoning district, but we might not have in the POS 4 zoning district for this particular property. As Brian said, the village passed its own master plan update in 2015, I believe. Within there, I think it's Chapter 8, there's an entire section on parks and open space within the village of Cary. This property is identified as parks and open space, so the use of the park is, complies with what the village master plan itself says. And I believe that the Park District has met the standards for both the map amendment, as Mr. Simmons went through, and then also the 3 different conditional uses on the property. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone would have.
Speaking for myself, I think you answered a lot of the questions that were kind of floating in this.
Yeah, they were floating and they're gone now. Yeah.
As to why now and why not in 2011 when it became available and that. So actually what we're doing now is preparing you for the future as I see it. And as you move forward with your master plan, presumably many of the uses will now be permitted that would have given you problems before. And so that's my vision of what's going on here. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions?
I do have one. In regards to the athletic field lights, the 2 poles that are within the setback requirements, or aren't in compliant with the setback requirements, were those put in as part of a whole system for the athletic fields? And what I mean by that, like a Musco lighting system or something like that. So the lighting, they were put in compliance with the foot candles that were necessary to provide safe play out there, and that's why they're located where they are. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the orientation of the fields would require that to be. I think it's a product of both those things, but it is a Musco system that's out there. You're correct. Those lights were installed, I believe, in like 1996.
Okay. I was just kind of curious why they were placed where they were, so.
Because the fields were where they are.
Yeah, but I'm trying to say, well, is there an option to move them? And obviously not really, because that would throw off the whole lighting plan of the field. So, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm not used to quiet.
I know.
From this end over here. Okay. Thank you, Dan. At this time, we generally open the floor to the public to ask questions or make a presentation or whatever, if they have any comments to make on the petition.
Is it just questions on that particular park?
On the Lions Park property at this point.
Okay.
You can hold off until we get the caper. Okay. Okay, seeing no action, we'll close the public portion and have our own discussion. Anybody have any questions for either Dan or Brian or comments?
We're pretty cut and dry. We're taking a existing grandfathered non-conforming use and making it a conforming use. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, in my opinion. I mean, it's they could stay with what they have and just stay a grandfathered non-conforming use
until they want to do something
until they
else.
want to do something else. So it's just a matter of getting them in the right zoning, which we created.
What is it? What we're doing?
Wow, you said 2011, and I read that, and I thought, God, has it been that long? Yes, it is.
Okay. If that's it, then I have one question, I guess, for Brian in reading your recommended motion here, conditional uses for lighted athletic fields, preschool and band shell shall be granted for the Lions Park property. Do we want to say as they presently exist, so that if some work's going to be done on them in the future, will that, they still need another conditional use?
Yeah,
Or-
if they add additional light poles on the property at other fields, or if they expand the preschool or expand the band shell, those would require amendments to the conditional use, so they'd have to go back through this process.
Okay, so should we add something in there as they presently exist, or?
Yeah, we should.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah,
I would
that'd be
agree with you on
certainly
that one,
fine.
Jim.
Okay, that was my only question. And that's the pleasure of the board, the way Brian has put together a suggested motion. Do we want to do it all in one, or you want to do the rezoning and then the conditional uses, as we've tended to do in the past? But in this case, I wouldn't have any real objection to doing it
In one motion.
all in one.
Yeah, I'm good with one motion.
Okay. So then the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the village board of trustees two actions, basically. Number one, the approval of a map amendment to rezone the Lions Park property located at 1200 Silver Lake Road from R1 Single Family Residential to PO4 Park and Open Space District 4. And secondly, approval of the three conditional uses for lighted athletic fields, a preschool, and a band shell, which presently exist on the property, with the following conditions. Number one, the conditional uses for lighted athletic fields, preschool, and band shell as presently exist shall be granted for the Lions Park property located at 1200 Silver Lake Road. And second condition, the athletic field lights shall not exceed 75 feet in overall height and shall be set back from the adjacent property lines a distance equal to the overall height installed. Two field lights shall be exempt from the setback requirements, but shall be located no closer than their existing 25 feet and 53 feet setbacks respectively from the Silver Lake Road property frontage.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to second that motion.
Thank you also. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Brian?
Commissioner Jasper,
Yes.
Commissioner Kretschmer,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Pippin,
Yes.
Chairman Graziano.
Yes. You have a unanimous recommendation for the Lions Park property. So you can get with Brian. It looks like possibly the September 5th meeting is when the village board would address this. And so keep in touch with Brian and we'll go from there. Moving on, I would like to call ZPA case numbers 17 ZPA 07002, also for the Cary Park District, this time for Caper Park at the northeast and southeast corners of Georgetown and Cimarron Drive over in the Cimarron area. And again, I assume all the exhibits and notifications are in order.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You want to give us a quickie on this, and probably don't have to go through all the requirements for a map amendment again?
Yeah. As mentioned, the request is for a map amendment to rezone from R1 to PO3 district for the subject property. There are no additional, unlike the other case, there are no conditional uses that are part of this request. It's a straight rezoning request. The Park District acquired the property in 1992 and has been utilized as a park since that date. The existing uses of a playground, soccer fields, parking facility, and maintenance shed are all permitted uses or existing uses on the site and would be permitted within the new zoning classification. As previously mentioned, the code was updated in 2011. That, similar to the Lions Park property, caused the subject site to become non-conforming once the Parks and Open Space Districts were created. This site is zoned R2, single family versus the previous case being zoned R1. The request is to rezone the property to the Park and Open Space District 3, which is a different zoning requirement than the previous case. This park is district is more designed to serve community-based recreation needs, also to preserve unique landscapes and natural areas, but to provide active and passive outdoor recreational uses and also allow limited indoor recreational uses. Again, the slide, which is in the image in the lower left-hand portion of the slide, shows the existing uses which are on the field are highlighted. That would be permitted uses, and then there are additional uses that would require conditional use approval. Should the petitioner want to pursue those in the future, those would have to go back through the zoning process for additional review of a zoning hearing. Again, the village adopted a comprehensive plan in 2015, and the subject property is designated for park and open space uses. The existing park is an appropriate use for that land use classification. The map amendment standards provided in the ordinance, or the zoning ordinance, are similar in this case as the previous case. Staff believes that the requested application complies with those standards, and therefore would recommend this board recommend approval of the following motion. Should you concur, approval of the map amendment to rezone the Caper Park property located on the corner of Georgetown and Cimarron Drives from the R2 single family residential district to the PO3 Park and Open Space District 3.
Very good, thank you. Dan, did you want to add anything for this one?
I don't. Mr. Simmons did an excellent job again of providing an overview on it. I would just say that, again, this would be fall into line with the village's comprehensive plan in terms of it being identified, this piece of property being identified as parks and open space, which would go with the master plan of the village of Cary. And then also that the standards that are set forth by the village code with regard to a map amendment, I think the Park District has provided ample, thinks that it meets those standards. So that's all I'd add, and I certainly can answer any questions.
You want to give us a hint as to what you're planning, that we're doing the rezoning at this time? Or?
Well, it's similar to the Lions Park. There's limited number of things that are on that site. Timbertown in particular. Timbertown's a 25-year-old wooden play structure that it has to have something done with it. It's not going to continue to exist in its current format forever.
Didn't we just rebuild that a few years ago?
No.
Boy,
Never been rebuilt in my time. So
it seems to me we had a work party out there. Maybe that was just to do repairs or something.
There's a desire from our comprehensive master plan process that we went through for permanent restrooms to be placed on that site. More than likely, that would be in the location where the Porta Johns are now, so it'd certainly be much less unsightly than what it is at this time. Long-term use of that site, it's been used heavily for soccer. There's been a rise and fall in town with regard to the number of children that are around to play different sports. Back in 2001, 2002, soccer was a program that was 1,500 strong in the fall and the spring. That's tailed off considerably in the present day. And so I think long-term, the district and the board sees that site as moving away from such intensive active use on the weekends as to what it's experienced in the past, with some of those items preferably being moved on to other park properties, such as Cary Grove, which I hope to be back in front of you for that, maybe next year at some time, to get that annexed or and zoned into the village of Cary. So as I said before with the Lions Park, this is a rebirth of the park as to what's there. It's not necessarily a departure from how it's been used.
Any questions from the board for Mr. Jones? I get the feeling that when I open this to the public this time that we may get some action. So I will do that at this time, open this to the public to make a statement, ask a question of either the board or Mr. Jones.
Okay, I do have a question.
Could you identify
Yes,
yourself?
absolutely. My name is Cynthia Galanis,
And your address?
304 Georgetown Drive.
must be close to Caper Park.
Across the street.
So, yes, what can we do for you?
My concern or question is in regards to putting permanent restrooms. And my concern is it's not very welcome. A permanent restroom is more of an activity for people to hide out in. And as a safety concern, a permanent restroom invites certain activities. And it's a porta potty. They can go to the bathroom in a porta potty. And my other concern is Timbertown. We have families who literally bring portable tents, and they go out there and they camp out every day. I mean, you drive by there every single day, and it's always being utilized. And my worry is that the neighborhood is going to lose that institution of everybody saying, oh, I know where Timbertown is. We go there and play there all the time. And so it's a safety concern in regards to the permanent restrooms, and it's also a family concern. Where do the kids go to play? Everybody loves going to Timbertown.
I'm not sure I'm following your line of thinking. If a small permanent facility were put in there, how would that deter from the uses that are going on now?
It wouldn't deter uses from going on there now. My concern is that you get people with permanent restrooms that, illicit activity could go on. That's my concern.
Well, I understand the restroom part of it. I didn't understand how that ties into.
It doesn't. It's two separate. I
Okay.
don't want to see Timbertown thrown away to the wayside because it's overrun its usefulness over the last 25 years. I mean, families go there every single day, and everybody knows about Timbertown, and everybody goes there, and it's still utilized heavily. So that's my concern.
Okay. You're listening to this, Dan?
I would, am I allowed to?
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to respond to all of them, or?
This is a zone, this is for zoning. Those thoughts that you expressed are excellent. The Park District is a public agency. We will have public meetings where you can come in, and we encourage people to come in and provide exactly that kind of feedback with what your concerns are. And to take a look and provide feedback on what the board is presenting and what their vision is for the site. And that would be probably the more appropriate venue for that, would be in that area. And you're welcome to do that. You can go on our website, you can sign up for the notices, we try to promote everything, and we hold a public meeting much like this.
Right, but once you get it rezoned, there's nothing really that I'm asking. Once it's rezoned, you don't have that possibility to say, well, we're going to do this because it is in the best interest, or I'm just asking, is that true? Once it's rezoned, you don't have a choice.
In other words, with the current zoning, can they put in a permanent toilet? And can they, change Timbertown?
Under the single-family residential district, no, they cannot construct a restroom facility. And if Timbertown were to be destroyed in a natural disaster or something that causes to be destroyed, they could not rebuild it without going through the zoning process to do so. So the rezoning classification or request would put the existing uses in a district that would be appropriate, so they could replace Timbertown with a similar structure or other use that comply with the zoning district, and a restroom facility would be able to be built under the provisions that are within the zoning ordinance.
Just, I guess I'll address Dan. In your presentation, I got the feeling you weren't talking about getting rid of Timbertown. I got the impression you were talking about enhancing it.
I'm not here to make a promise on anything. What I hear is, tonight with regard to our applications is that as part of our action plan, we are working through a rebirth for that site. What that'll be ultimately, I don't actually know at this time. That's something for the board to take a look at and decide. Something has to be done with Timbertown due to its age and what it is. But I mean, for this evening,
I'm not sure that this should become a referendum on what is gonna be in or.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that, I'm just trying to,
Well, it's in progress, and I certainly would encourage you to come and participate in the partnership process and share those wonderful thoughts that you have with regard to your concerns as a close neighbor to the park site. Because our board would love to hear those things and try and take those into account as we move forward. We all want things to last forever, but we still, I mean, it's as I spoke about with Lions Park, the building that's over there has reached the end of its useful life, and needs to, the concession and restroom building over there just doesn't work well anymore, so it needs
Right.
to be addressed.
I had two concerns, though. The first one was putting a permanent restroom in, and that is a huge concern of mine, is that it is an enclosed space, and you're expanding Sage across the street, and you've got individuals that, in a time of need, will need a covered spot to do what they need to do, and my concern is that being a close neighbor to that property, it scares me and it concerns me, because if it's an enclosed spot, what are you going to do? Have a police officer there every half hour? It's a concern of mine. I didn't know where else to go to voice it, and I wanted to do it before it was way too late.
that's why we have public hearings.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
comments, and
Do I have to go out there, or can I just add something to what she said?
if you identify yourself, you can do it wherever you want.
I'm Barbara White. I live at 853 Cimarron, and I've lived here for like 25 years. And I'm one of the original owners when Timbertown was built 25 years ago. Well, nothing's changed. It hasn't been maintained. Everything is still exactly the same. The park is falling apart and needs major repairs. I mean, my kids are all grown now. In half our neighborhood, there's not nearly as many kids as there was when that park was built. And, I don't see it used as much as it has been in the past, but it's majorly deteriorating. So I don't know what they have planned, because everything's broken pretty much in there and not replaced, and it's becoming unsafe for kids to play there. So I don't know what they have planned to do with it, because it's not good in an existing spot.
Okay. I'm sure Ms. Jones taking all this in, and we appreciate your
Has anybody
comments.
maintained it since?
That park's been maintained continuously on an annual basis. There's monthly inspections done on it from a safety standpoint. So it's been maintained. We just had our loss control review out in the park, and they reviewed it. So it's not, Timbertown's not an unsafe structure. It has been maintained. We wouldn't allow for anything that was considered to be unsafe to remain that way at any of our playground sites.
Well, yeah, because I was just there today, and like that spider thing that kids climb on, the chains are broken. And the kid was climbing on it today, and the chain broke. I mean, luckily he didn't get hurt.
Well, that's something we can send somebody over there to take a look at it. What I can tell you is that park was inspected. Somebody was out there as recent as Wednesday of this week. We had our last control review. So things do happen in the parks, but things break and inspected, but it's been maintained, and it's very heavily used. It has been, as you would know, for years.
Right, yeah, but like now it's not as used as much as it used to be. And the soccer, I mean, they had like tournaments there, but like years ago, I mean, that place was packed all the
Remember
time.
when it was?
Yeah. And now all the kids have grown, the families have moved out, and we don't have as much turnover with the young anymore. As far as like, I mean, we're closing all our schools, and I don't know why somebody hasn't rezoned the school district either, because half of Cimarron goes to Crystal Lake schools, and Cary schools are being closed.
That's when you gotta pick up with.
Oh, okay, Mr. Smith. Why hasn't
Take
it
it
been
up with the school
rezoned the
districts.
school district
That's
in
actually
Cary?
the school
That's the
board.
school board.
Oh, so they do that?
Yeah, they're a
But-
different taxing body.
Yeah, I mean, they keep closing Cary schools, but half of Cimarron goes to Crystal Lake schools, which I don't think is right, but, I mean, all my kids are done through the school system, it's just for the families that are moving here. And if, you know, they move to Cary, they're paying Cary taxes, they should be able to go to Cary schools and not the Crystal Lake.
Yeah, for the residences that are going to the Crystal Lake schools, they're paying taxes to the Crystal Lake School District. They're not paying to
In
District
Cary?
20. Yes. So
Those poor people.
the school district boundaries are not the same as village district boundaries, as our park districts as well, but park district boundaries are not the same as the village of Cary's boundaries. So different taxing bodies have jurisdiction over various properties. You just don't see where those lines are drawn in the sand. But that would be if the two school districts wanted to redistrict themselves or redraw their boundaries, where those homes are currently going to Crystal Lake, we go to Cary, it would be between those two district taxing bodies to come to an agreement on, what properties would change hands.
Okay. When do you guys have like those school board meetings?
School board is not part of the village of Cary,
so
but they
it goes
meet,
through-
I think the first and third Monday of each month.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sure you can find it online.
Yeah, and their website will have that information.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Oh, one more.
My name is Robin DeVries. I'm at 910 Merrimack. And my question is about the southeast corner, the actual unimproved corner of the park. That's really a retention area. And with the zoning change, would that allow them to build into that retention area?
The detention area provides detention for the subdivision.
Yes.
So there would not be improvements that would be performed in that area without complying with the county's stormwater ordinance. So if any, in the short term, I can't envision that they'd be performing improvements in there. But from a standpoint, if something were to happen in that area, they would need to comply with the ordinance and provide detention elsewhere so that it wouldn't impact the neighborhood and cause flooding issues in other areas.
Okay.
All right.
You agree with that?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's the county ordinance.
Okay. I don't see anyone else raising their hand or trying to get our attention, so we will close the public portion of the public testimony portion of the meeting. And any questions by the board for Brian or Dan or?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say something. I'm glad Mr. Jones was here to hear those concerns. I just wanted to state that I don't believe that it is the purview of this board to not approve a zoning change that fits in with the comprehensive plan and is in compliance with all of our regulations and statute in order to try to change the use of the park or dictate the use of the park. That would much better be left up to the park district board, and I would strongly encourage the folks here that came and spoke tonight. Your words were heard by the top administrator for the park district, but attend the park district meeting and bring your concerns forward to them, to that board, because they can help you much more than this board can. Our role is strictly to decide if the request fits with the comprehensive plan, the zoning codes, the rules and regulations of the village. We can't help you with specific concerns as it relates to the park. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Thank you.
I would disagree slightly.
Oh, well, please feel free to correct me, Mr. Dasper.
Well, I think maybe not this issue, but issues are within the purview of not making this map amendment because of something that is or could be so significant that we feel that it is best controlled by this group or controlled by the village. So this group and the village board. I think the concerns that she brought up are very real, but I think that they can be done as equally well at the park district level as it can within this level. I think that we would ask, they'd have to come to us for a conditional use, and we would ask the same questions that she or others will ask, or hopefully they'll ask of themselves in consideration of how to secure the area. So, I don't think that these changeovers, these changes in the map amendments are necessarily slam dunks. I think there are potentially things that, could or would need to be kept within the village purview rather than the park district purview. And so.
No, very good point, very good point. Thank you.
Separation there, so.
Yeah, I think my point was more that I don't feel personally comfortable telling the park district what they can and can't do until they've discussed it at their board level. And then maybe bring it back.
If we hadn't made the change, what would happen is they'd decide at their board level that they wanted to put permanent restroom facilities in there, and then they'd tell the director to come to us and ask for a conditional use.
Right, and I would be much more comfortable with.
Well, that's what would happen,
Yes.
If we didn't make the map amendment change.
I see,
However,
okay.
I think that the discussion that they'll have at their board level is going to be the same as we have here, and I think they're just as committed board members as we are towards making the right decisions
Right.
for the neighborhoods
Right.
and the individual citizens. So, but I think that there could be things that, and I can't bring them to the top as an example to out right now, but there are things that there could be things that would make not approving a map amendment real.
Right,
But
okay.
I just don't think restrooms are one of them.
Okay, thanks.
I have one question that with the rains that we had a few weekends ago, and going back a couple of years ago when we had all the flooding on the streets and such, to what level does that collection area fill up? That's a darn deep collection area.
Yeah, it's.
Wow.
It depends on the rain. I mean, if it's
And how
designed.
fast does it drain out?
It took days or weeks almost. Right. Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
In 1 year, I lived where that whole retention pond filled up and went across the street. It made it all the way almost up to Cottonwood water and stopped there. So when
Okay.
you were driving down Cimarron, the water on that street
Mhm.
was over your bumper.
I'm going to make one comment here. It has nothing, unfortunately, it has nothing to do with this board or our ability to make changes, but Mr. Director, have you ever thought about securing that area? I mean, when that thing is full like that, it's got to be a nuisance hazard. I mean, we're lucky that nobody's drowned. I mean, I have a retention pond by my place that is only 4 feet deep, 4 to 5. And, every time it fills up, there are kids around there. That's a big open space that fills up with gravel pit level depth. And it falls off fairly quickly. So, somebody falls in, and they don't know how to swim, or they know how to swim and panic, drowning's a real hazard there. So has that ever been discussed at the board level as to how to protect against that?
I honestly don't think I understand your question.
You've got the retention
There's a
area.
number of ponds, though. I know the retention area, and I know what
Yeah.
I'm speaking of, but I mean, there's a pond that's adjacent to those bodies that doesn't, I don't know what you mean by secure it. That pond exists all the time, and there is.
Well, I'm not familiar with the particular depth of that pond, and the pond is there. So I wouldn't consider, and again, I'm just speaking for myself here. I'm not speaking for these guys, not speaking for anything that the board can ask the park district to do. I'm saying the fact that, that pond exists and everybody's aware of it, so I wouldn't consider it an attractive nuisance. Okay? When we have a rainstorm and all of a sudden something that wasn't an attractive nuisance becomes an attractive nuisance, and it is such an attractive nuisance that, drowning becomes a real possibility. So I'm just wondering if there isn't if there shouldn't be a discussion of how to lessen that attractive nuisance. So,
Maybe you want to ask that question to Mr. Simmons?
no, it has nothing to do with the village or the board or anything. That's, if somebody drowns, they're going to sue you. They're going to sue the village, but the village is going to get out of it because it isn't their property. They're going to sue you, and you're going to be in trouble, and then you're going to have to raise your taxes, my taxes, to be able to pay for the lawsuit. So,
I'll just answer the first question you asked me. Has it ever been considered the answer?
okay. So, that's all.
Is that all?
I'm good.
I have one question. Trying to read through this because I couldn't remember the discussion when we created the PO 1, 2, 3, 4. I understand PO 1. I understand PO 4. What's the difference between 2 and 3, and why did we pick 3 on this one? I can't see any size requirements. I can't see.
No, and that's, when reviewing the districts, I wasn't involved in the discussions as far as how 4 districts were created.
I don't recall.
Yeah, most communities which have park and open space requirements or districts, they have 1 district, or they're a part of the residential zoning classification. And I wasn't around when that discussion was taking place here, so I can't say why there were 4 districts that were created. In between certain ones, there's not much difference as far as uses that are permitted.
I guess my question is, like you're saying, why 4?
Right, this one, yeah.
I can understand 3, maybe, little one, big one, everything else in the middle.
Yeah, and I mean, from, prior experience, having, one zoning classification that would allow certain, and have different classifications of parks within that district, versus a neighborhood park versus a community or regional park. So you can provide, so you can provide regulations for those specific parks within those districts, within a district, and have regulations from that standpoint. But this was just the route that the village took at the time to create those 4 districts. I think,
answer that
yeah.
question a little bit better. One of the challenges that we had with it was the size of the different properties within the park district based on the uses of those different properties. So when we started it, you wanted to create this objective framework as to a park that's of X amount size that would go into the zoning class. The challenge came into parks like JC, which is like so many acres, so it was like too big, and we want to allow all these crazy uses on it. We wanted to keep it down there, so there was another class that was created. So it was really it was just a challenge with the size. I mean, we have, like, take a park like Greenfields, and I can't tell you how big Greenfields is off the top of my head, but really when people think of Greenfields, you think of it as a local neighborhood park. A lot of those are like an acre inside or 3/4 an acre inside. They have a play structure, and that's how you think of Greenfields. But actually, Greenfields goes all the way down and all the way around, and it's several acres in size. So it just wasn't like, it was tough to get like one size fits all, so it went into more of the uses on the classes. That was really what came of that.
Well, like I say, I understand the less than an acre. I understand 50 acres could support an aquatic center, whatever. It was the 2 in the middle that just bothered me, and why we picked 3 instead of 2 on this one. So, okay, I've said my piece. Any other questions? Chair would then entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Trustees approval of a map amendment to rezone the Caper Park property located on both the northeast and southeast corners of the intersection of Georgetown and Cimarron Drive from R2 Single Family Residential to the PO3 Park and Open Space District 3.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Kretschmer,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Pippin,
Yes.
Commissioner Jasper,
Yes.
Chairman Graziano.
Yes. And again, you have a very positive recommendation from this board, and we look forward to all the good things you're going to do for us. Anything else we should be talking about, Brian?
Nothing else on the agenda for this evening. We will have a meeting in 2 weeks on August 24th. We do have a petition that will be reviewed that evening for the Westlake subdivision.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second.
Thank you. Voice vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned at 8:25.